Welcome to Lesson 7, Editing for Run-On Sentences. So, believe it or not, this is not a run-on sentence. I know it looks very long and it seems like it should be, but what determines a run-on sentence is if the sentence adheres to proper usage of punctuation and subordinating or coordinating clauses. And because this sentence does, it's not a run-on sentence. Elizabeth, New Jersey, where my mother was being raised there in a flat over her father's grocery store, was an industrial port a quarter the size of Newark, dominated by the Irish working class and their politicians and the tightly knit parish life that revolved around the town's many churches. And though I never heard her complain of having been pointedly ill-treated in Elizabeth as a girl, it was not until she married and moved to Newark's new Jewish neighborhood that she discovered the confidence that led her to become first a PTA grade mother, then a PTA vice president in charge of establishing a kindergarten mothers club. It's interesting because up until this part of the sentence, there are tons of non-restrictive clauses that you see, which are basically clauses that have a comma in front and a comma in the end, right? Which means you can take it out of the sentence and it won't change the meaning of the sentence. With those, you're able to extend the length of this part of the sentence. And then you'll notice here we have a comma and a coordinating conjunction that join the rest up until this part of the sentence. And so this author employs the same thing, using non-restrictive clauses enclosed by commas to extend the length of this part of the sentence. And it closes off with another comma, coordinating conjunction, and the end. Right, again, we have non-restrictive clauses enclosed by commas that extend the sentence here. And that is how you're able to write a sentence that's this length without it being a run-on, because this author's using commas, coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and non-restrictive clauses accurately. In this lesson, we're just going to talk specifically about simple ways to prevent run-on sentences, not anything as complex as non-restrictive clauses. So the point, length has little to do with writing grammatically correct sentences. Believe it or not, I am is a complete sentence. It has a subject and it has a verb. So a sentence can be as short as I am here or as long as this sentence here. Length has nothing to do with it. There are 4 types of sentences: simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. A simple sentence has one independent clause and no subordinate clauses. Example, great literature stirs the imagination. The subject is great literature and the verb is stirs. Compound sentences. Compound sentences have 2 or more independent clauses, but they are joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So here you have the equation, independent clause, plus a comma, plus a coordinating conjunction, plus an independent clause again. So here we have our example. Great literature stirs the imagination and it challenges the intellect. So you'll see this is the independent clause joined by the comma, the coordinating conjunction, and the remaining independent clause. And here I have a little note. Remember, coordinating conjunctions are easily remembered through the acronym FANBOYS, and they're listed here. Complex sentences. Complex sentences include one independent clause and one or more subordinate clauses. The equation here is independent clause plus subordinate clause. So you'll see we have great literature also challenges the intellect. That is the complete sentence, even though there's a break. This is the subordinate clause. This is the break, and it starts with which, and you'll see how it is enclosed with 2 commas. And that means that you can basically take it out and you have your complete sentence here, your independent clause rather. All right, let's keep going. Compound complex sentences. Compound complex sentences consist of 2 or more independent clauses and 1 or more subordinate clauses. Your example is below, or this is the equation before we get into the example. independent clause plus independent clause plus subordinated clause. And it doesn't necessarily have to meet the flow of the equation. This is just to kind of help you remember what needs to be in the sentence, not necessarily where it needs to be. So again, you have great literature is sometimes difficult, comma, coordinating conjunction, but it is also rewarding. And you still have your subordinating clause here. So again, we could take this out. Let me show you what that would look like. If we take this out, now you have your compound sentence, right? One independent clause here, one independent clause here, joined by your comma and your coordinating conjunction. So essentially, compound complex is just a compound sentence joined with a subordinating clause, which is here. And so editing for run-on sentences. A run-on sentence is a sentence in which two independent clauses are not connected or separated correctly. An example of this might be a comma splice, which is a type of run-on sentence that occurs when a comma without a coordinating conjunction is used between two independent clauses, which is not the proper way to join two independent clauses. You need more than just a comma. You need a comma and a coordinating conjunction, also known as fanboy. Effective sentences vary in type and length. Knowing that reading would put her to sleep no matter how good the story was, Rita yawned, stretched, and reached for the thick novel on her nightstand. Just then, she thought she heard a noise. Barely allowing herself to breathe, she slowly sat up and put on her robe. Then the doorknob began to turn. She froze. So notice there's a longer sentence here, added with a regular length sentence, a somewhat longer sentence, again, another regular length, and then finally you have a very short length sentence, right? This is a mix of sentences with different lengths as well as different sentence types, right? This is a simple sentence. It just has a verb and a subject. She froze. However, here you have a sentence with a clause here, barely allowing herself to breathe, joined with an independent clause, right? She slowly sat up and put on her robe. So the point is that when you're writing, you want your piece of writing to include a variety of sentences, not just all simple sentences, not just all compound sentences, etc., right? Having a mix of sentences adds in variety and breaks up the tone of the reading from monotonous, adding different inflections and emotions for the reader. So for the you are going to go through and you're going to edit this text for run-on sentences, okay? It says, I've never known anyone who was a better worker than Paula, who always did her homework in half the time I took. Concentration was the secret of her success. She undoubtedly had a keen mind. I asked Paula to help me with my math once when I was particularly desperate. She could do the problems easily and she could explain them to me so that I could understand them. Mr. Jones, who was my math teacher, was very surprised when I knew how to do the problems. Without asking any questions, he was proud of me. I was proud of myself. Proved to be a turning point in my math education. From then until the time I graduated, I never made a math grade lower than a B. Paula never knew it. Her helping me with my math homework eventually led to my career in engineering. I'm successful today. Someone took the time to help me when I needed it. I will never forget the smart girl who changed my life, Paula the hard worker. So there are several types of run-on sentences here, and there are multiple ways to correct them. So what you're going to do for your exit ticket is you're going to read, copy and paste this passage and make the appropriate corrections according to the different types of sentences and the rules that govern them. You'll notice on the final slide there's an answer key that supports you for checking your work. And that is lesson 7, editing for run-on sentences.